Hey everyone, I'm rather incoherent, and this is Burglary. Burglary is one of the genuinely awful economy cards available to Green. Green has some of the best economy cards in the game, but they also have the most, and so their bad economy cards stand out really violently when you compare them to the immediately available alternative tools that Rogue has, like Faustian Bargain. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about Burglary itself. Burglary is a one-cost asset, takes up no slots. As an action, you exhaust it and investigate. If you succeed, instead of discovering clues, gain 3 resources. Let's not compare it to the alternatives, let's compare it to the baseline, to emergency cash. On the first turn, you spent 1, gained 3, and spent 2 actions, so you've gained 2 resources over 2 actions. That's just far worse than spending 1 action for 3 resources with emergency cash. On the second turn, you have spent 3 actions to gain 5 resources. Again, that's not better than emergency cash. Emergency cash could have spent those additional 2 actions gaining resources and matched this. It's only on the third turn and later that Burglary can ever surpass emergency cash. In a normal deck, the point of an economy card is to set up and play your assets, or to have enough money pooled to play your events. Burglary takes multiple turns and many actions to do that. So Burglary isn't actually able to help you set up because it's taking your actions away from setting up to play Burglary over and over and over again. What's worse, though, is I just told you need to spend 4 actions on Burglary for it to be better than emergency cash. If you had instead played emergency cash and just successfully investigated 3 times, you'd have gotten 3 clues and progressed the game. So I actually have a more important question. Was the additional resources worth 3 clues? Was the setup you're planning on doing with this more valuable than just getting the clues? And the answer is almost always no. But that leads to the most damning question of all. If you're a cluever, and you're desperately trying to generate money with Burglary to gain resources to set up, which requires you to be passing investigate checks, then why do you need money to set up? You're already passing investigate checks. You're doing your job, but you're just choosing to gain money instead of getting the clues that win the game. Burglary is a setup card that takes too long to be used during setup and can only be used if you're already set up in pretty much any normal deck. And if you want to talk about using it in a big money decks need a lot of separate economy cards to guarantee they never miss their economy. You can't just rely on Burglary every turn and run a 28 card deck with Burglaries. You have to run like a 22 card deck with 6 to 8 economy cards. So when you're comparing Burglary to your emergency caches and your Faustian Bargains and whatever your other 4 are, you have plenty of options. Burglary is just easily the worst one. And when you start talking about experienced cards and the upgraded Burglary compared to things like Easy Mark and Hot Streak, it gets even worse. Burglary is just a genuinely unplayable card. And it's a lot more offensive to me than something like Switchblade, where if you were playing Switchblade as a new player, it would cost you a card and a resource, but it really wouldn't mess you up that badly. It would just be bad. But Burglary will bait you into spending its action over and over again and doing basically nothing. As a new player, I was tricked into looking at Burglary, looking at Schizo Tool, and being like, oh, cool. This just gives me 1 resource, so I can spend 2 of the resources to get the action back. But like I said, Burglary is only good, or playable rather, if you're consistently passing the investigate checks, which Skids doesn't do. And that led to a lot of my frustrations when I first played the game. And I feel like a lot of new players have had that experience. They've put Burglary in their deck and repeatedly used Burglary and essentially contributed nothing and wasted their time and feel terrible about it. Burglary is one of the biggest trap cards in the game. And I would have ended the video there, but there are a lot of people who make arguments specifically about using Rex Murphy or deduction or what have you to investigate with Burglary, get the resources, and still get a clue. My problem with that statement is that it ignores the problem. All of my previous statements about Burglary are still true, though. The opportunity cost is still 1 clue. You're still successfully investigating to gain resources to set up, but you're setting up to investigate, so what was the point? The argument's been made that if you're doing it at a 1 clue location, for example, then you're not wasting anything. And with Untabooed Rex, that is admittedly a scenario that will come up. But your flex cards have a much better use than Burglary for that 1 niche situation. But with Tabooed Rex or Deduction, the resource of the extra clue is limited to once per turn or once per card for either of them. You could have just investigated where you were, moved to a new location, and then used Rex's ability to get 2 clues there. It was still opportunity cost of 1 clue for burglary, because he used burglary and his ability instead of using his ability at a different location. If you used deduction on a location with 1 clue to use burglary, you could have just kept deduction in your hand and played it somewhere else. There just isn't a situation where burglary is good. Burglary is just a fundamentally awful card. It spends a lot of actions generating resources by successfully investigating. So fighters can't use it, and cluevers are generating resources instead of clues, but who knows what they're setting up for because they clearly are already capable of getting the clues. There is legitimately no merit to playing burglary. Although I will admit that it was really funny in my first campaign when I was using burglary in the Arkham Woods, and thematically I had no idea what I was robbing.